So, I just finished JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 6 Stone Ocean, despite Netflix's attempts to bury that anime and prevent anyone from watching it. In my recent video about Romantic Killer, I said that Netflix either releases terrible anime or fantastic ones with no in-between. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is the in-between. Now overall, I think Stone Ocean is great, and I'd probably consider it to be my second favourite part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, with Part 4 still being my personal favourite. But there are a few things about Stone Ocean that I really didn't like and really bugged me. They're things that stopped me from saying that I loved Part 6 and instead make me say that I liked it, because I did overall enjoy Stone Ocean. I have mentioned in the past my thoughts on the other parts of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but to make sure that you're all up to date, then I'll provide a very brief summary of my thoughts on each part. Hopefully this will provide context for my feelings on Stone Ocean. So, Part 1 is bad. Like really bad. I hate it. I refuse to drop anime. I will finish it regardless of how boring or bad it is, even if that means I have it on in the background. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was the first time that I actually considered dropping an anime. Part 1 is awful, not mediocre, it is terrible. Now Part 2 also kind of sucks. I know people really like Part 2, but I just don't. I think it continues to be weird for the sake of it, and overall I think it's just mediocre. However, I want it to be known that I love Joseph Joestar. He's one of my favourite anime characters, and Tomokazu Sugita is my favourite voice actor. It's just that everything around Joseph Joestar was lacking in my opinion. Part 3 is the first part that I actually like. Yes, it is too long, but I really like the characters of Part 3. Obviously Joseph is the best, but I feel like when people think of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's this group that springs to mind first. Part 4 is excellent. I love Part 4. I think it's the closest JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has ever gotten to perfection. It is that good. This part has the best characters in JoJo in my opinion. Yeah, Josuke isn't the best JoJo, but that's offset by the presence of both Jotaro and Joseph. And then there's characters like Koichi and Kishibe Rohan. And then don't even get me started on Kira, the best villain in all of JoJo. Like I said, I really like Part 4. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day I make an entire video dedicated to this part. Part 5 has a really strong start, but I'll be honest, I really don't like Part 5. To me, it's just a repeat of Part 3, but with far less interesting characters. I know Part 3 and Part 5 aren't one for one, but I really just don't click with this part. Although Butiarity is absolutely the best aspect of Part 5. So now that you're up to date on my feelings, let's discuss Part 6. Let's start with the characters. Jolene Kujo is a fantastic protagonist, and probably my favourite JoJo after Joseph. One aspect of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that is usually lacking is the actual JoJo for that part. Jonathan Joestar was boring and bland, and like his part, underdeveloped. Jotaro was overshadowed by how good Joseph is, and with his appearances in parts 4, 5 and 6, it is very clear that Jotaro works much better as a supporting player instead of the main lead. Josuke was alright, but like I said, the ensemble cast of Part 4 was so good that Josuke ended up drifting into the background, and it's been said quite a lot that Giano Giovanni is by far one of the weakest aspects of Part 5. Even people that love Part 5 could probably agree that Giano is a pretty crap lead. Only Joseph Joestar really stands out as a great protagonist who perfectly suits the weirdness of the JoJo universe. Well, until Jolene shows up. Jolene is great, and a lot of my enjoyment for Part 6 can be attributed to how good of a character she is. She actually feels like the main character instead of part of an ensemble, and you can see how her character develops over the course of the show. At the start of the part, she comes across as quite weak and willing to do what others tell her to, shown by her relationship with her boyfriend. But by the end of the part, she comes across as awesome. She makes her own decisions and actually seems to care about the people around her. It becomes very clear why the people around her follow her, and her kindness and strength are what ultimately define Jolene as a character. I can only hope that Johnny Joestar in Part 7 continues the excellent character work of Jolene. Now, how about the other characters in Part 6? Well, I feel the same way about the characters in Part 6 as I do Part 6. My feelings are mixed. I love some of Stone Ocean's characters and could probably do without the others. Like I said, I love Jotaro as a supporting player, and Stone Ocean really made that even more clear to me, to the point that I was disappointed by how little he showed up in this part. I really wanted more of him. Foo Fighters was the standout for me. I absolutely adored her character. She, to me, is perfect JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. She is really weird, but in a way that suits the anime. She doesn't feel eccentric for the sake of eccentricity. She actually comes across as a well-rounded character, and there was a moment in part 6 where I was on the edge of my seat as Father Pucci kept getting closer and closer to killing her. More characters like Foo Fighters, please. Weather Report was another character that I liked, although I absolutely hate his hair. Call me Groot, but I have no idea whether he's wearing a hat or if that is his actual hair. I thought it was a hat because there are horns sticking out, but then in the flashbacks for his character, it actually does seem like it's his hair. So I found his character to be very confusing. Honestly, I really liked him and I loved his power. The twist involving his character was one that I didn't really care about either way though, if I'm being honest. Then there's Emporio. I like Emporio. He just seems like a nice boy. Although I do wish that it was Jolene that got the cool moment at the end of the anime instead of Emporio. Now that I've spoken about the characters that I like, let's talk about the ones that I don't. Anasui sucks. He's so one-note and boring. I could not stand him. He's the opposite of Foo Fighters. He's a character that's weird for the sake of it. Why does he have footprints on his outfits? That's another thing. I really don't like the character designs of this part. I love Jolene's outfit, but aside from her, I hated everyone else's. Anyway, let's get back on track. Anasui sucks. Hermes was alright, but I did get bored of her character after a bit. She was another character who had a really cool power, and I liked her friendship with Jolene, but anytime she was with Jolene, Jolene would overshadow her, and anytime she wasn't with Jolene, I wanted Jolene to show up. She was a fine character, but she didn't live up to how good some of the other characters in Stone Ocean were. I mentioned earlier that the protagonists of JoJo are usually quite weak, and I feel the same about the villains. Dio was an interesting villain in part 1, but because I hated part 1, I never really got attached to him. I don't even remember the names of the villains for part 2. Part 3 brought Dio back, but he was barely in part 3, so once again, I didn't really connect with him, although I did like whenever he was on screen. Part 4 had Kira, and Kira was awesome. Part 5 had Diavolo, who was just kind of boring, and then part 6 has Father Pucci. So is Father Pucci like Jolene? Is he one of the exceptions? No. I did not like Father Pucci, and I kept hoping that Dio would show up. I knew Dio was in part 6, and I was hoping that Pucci was going to revive him. I thought Dio was going to be that little green baby, or better yet, I theorised that the green baby was actually going to transform into Jonathan Joestar. Why? Because Dio gave Pucci one of his bones, which could have been one of the bones from Jonathan Joestar's body, which Dio had taken over, and because the baby had a stand. We had never seen Jonathan Joestar's stand, so I thought that this baby would turn out to be Jonathan Joestar, and that the stand that changes the size of things would be Jonathan's stand. But instead, the baby ate Father Pucci or something and then became a stronger version of Father Pucci, I think. I'm not really sure what happened or why Pucci became stronger, but all I know is that I was disappointed. I didn't like Pucci because he had the opposite problem to Dio in part 3. Dio didn't show up enough in part 3, and Pucci showed up too much in part 6. He quickly became too oversaturated for me and wore out his welcome. Father Pucci felt more like a character that was serving a master, and I kept waiting for that secret master to show up in the show and reveal themselves as the real big bad of part 6. But they never did. It was just Father Pucci the whole time. However, overall, I liked part 6, and it gave great character development to Jolene. Also, these problems in part 6 were not enough to prevent me from liking Stone Ocean. So why did I say that I like Stone Ocean instead of loving it? The reason is simple. I hate Stone Ocean's ending. Now I am going to go into spoilers for this, so you have been warned. I hate Stone Ocean's ending because it is confusing. I just didn't get it. My chimp brain was too small and smooth to understand what I had just watched. I've looked into the ending a little bit, and it seems that what happened, based on my understanding, is that Father Pucci killed everyone except for Emporio and brought everyone who didn't die into a new timeline. Emporio then used Weather Report's stand to kill Father Pucci and return everyone's souls to the previous timeline. However, because Father Pucci was killed, his soul didn't return to the previous timeline, so the timeline was slightly altered. Jolene didn't go to prison because Father Pucci wasn't around to make her go to prison, and her name was Irene instead of Jolene because she no longer needed to be a JoJo in this universe because Father Pucci no longer existed. And all the characters meet up together again because they are fated to, as fate is extremely important in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure universe. Is this correct? If it is, then I like this. However, why is Anasui's name different? How come he and Hermes didn't go to prison? Is Jotaro still called Jotaro? What about the other JoJos? There were too many unanswered questions that I don't think we'll ever get answers to because parts 7 and 8 take place in a different universe. So not only is this ending the end of Stone Ocean, it's the end of the Joestar Kujo Giovanni, whatever Josuke's last name was, saga. And it is not, in my opinion, a satisfying ending to parts 1 to 6. Why was the ending so confusing? Why did I have to look up what the ending meant? Before you say anything, this is anime, and anime, especially JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, loves to explain everything in mind-numbing detail, even when it doesn't need to. So why, for the one time that they actually had something confusing and requiring explanation, did Speedwagon not show up out of nowhere and explain the entire ending? Stone Ocean was great, but its ending was just too much and too little at the same time. My understanding of the ending might be right, but it's also based off a random comment I read on Reddit that could be completely wrong. I don't know. You guys don't know for certain either. I hate ambiguous endings that are confusing, and I hate that this is the end that we get to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I am excited for things to start afresh in part 7, which is apparently the best part, although I've heard that the animators are worried about animating the notoriously difficult to animate horses, so we'll see how much CGI is present in part 7. I'm sad and disappointed that JoJo is over, and that I might not get to see Joseph or Jolene again, because I really like them. I liked Stone Ocean, but it didn't land the ending in my opinion, and I didn't like some of the characters or their designs. Although before I forget to say, the soundtrack and sound design continue to be killer in this anime. If it wasn't for Bleach 1000-Year Blood War, then I would say that Stone Ocean had the best soundtrack in anime that I heard in 2022. Before I cease my rambling and end this video, I thought that I would quickly rank the parts of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that have been animated. In 6th place is of course part 1, 5th place is part 2, 4th place is part 5, bronze medal and 3rd place go to part 3, Stone Ocean picks up the silver and 2nd place, and of course part 4 takes home the gold. Hopefully you can understand my misgivings with Stone Ocean and still recognise that I did enjoy this part. I hope to hear what you think in the comments, especially about the ending. I'd like to hear whether you liked it and why, and what you think the ending actually meant. Anyway, that's all for today. Bye bye.